Professor Pomona Sprout was a witch who worked as head of the Herbology department at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. She attended the school in her youth, where she excelled at herbology early on. Sometime after her graduation, she returned to Hogwarts to teach. This is the life of Pomona Sprout. Pomona Sprout was born into the Sprout wizarding family of an unknown blood status on May 15, 1941 in Great Britain. She presumably purchased her first wand from Diagon Alley at the age of 11, prior to attending Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Pomona was sorted into Hufflepuff House upon her arrival at Hogwarts when she was 11 years old in 1952. Sprout excelled at herbology, which would have been taught by Professor Herbology at the time, and she likely achieved a high-graded OWL in the subject, and possibly in Newt as well, since she went on to teach it. Pomona and Minerva McGonagall's student time at Hogwarts overlapped by 2 years. The two students enjoyed an excellent relationship both then and in later years. Sometime after graduating, Pomona returned to the school to teach, becoming the herbology professor. She taught her classes in the greenhouses at the back of the castle and used one of the greenhouses as an office also. Professor Sprout then later became head of the herbology department and also head of Hufflepuff House, but it is unknown if both positions were required within close proximity of each other. Sprout used to bring the most interesting specimens from the herbology greenhouses to decorate the Hufflepuff basement. This was one of the reasons why Hufflepuffs were often very good in her subject. Sprout was also Nymphadora Tonk's head of house in the late 1980s and early 1990s. However, she did not make Nymphadora a prefect in her 5th year, due to her inability to behave herself, but Tonks pleasantly surprised Sprout after she earned at least 5 Newts in her 7th year. Pomona was very understanding and quite lenient. An example of her leniency occurred sometime in between 1987 and 1990, when Gabriel Truman, a 3rd year Hufflepuff at the time, got into a duel with the Ravenclaw prefect, who argued that the famous arithmancer Bridget Wenlock must have been in his own house, not Hufflepuff, as she was in fact. Gabriel felt he deserved a week's worth of detentions for his own actions, but Professor Sprout went easy on him, admiring his suggestion for his own punishment. She sent him off with a warning and a box of coconut ice. Sprout was still teaching at Hogwarts by the 1991-92 school year, and just before the start of term, Albus Dumbledore trusted her to contribute to the defences of the Philosopher's Stone chambers. Sprout, being the herbology professor, planted a large amount of Devil's Snare in the chamber, which broke the fall of the one trying to get to the stone, but also tried to kill them. The trick was to use fire or sunlight to force the snare into retreat. That year, she taught her first years 3 times a week in Greenhouse 1 and taught them how to care for various herbs and fungi. The first lesson focused on recognising plants found in the Hogwarts grounds, using a copy of the ingredient encyclopedia as a reference. Other lessons covered learnings such as the Incendio charm. Sprout also lectured her students about specific plants, including Devil's Snare as previously mentioned. She also attended Quidditch matches with Minerva McGonagall too. That same year, Sprout met Harry Potter, who was among the first years she taught, though she didn't seem as fazed with his celebrity status like many others. She was also present at the end of term feast, in which Slytherin lost the House Cup to Gryffindor, ending their 7-year winning streak, something that she thoroughly enjoyed, even if it wasn't her own house that was the victor. Pomona was also present in the castle when the Golden Trio stopped Voldemort from gaining possession of the Philosopher's Stone during the attack in the underground chambers on the 4th of June. Impressed with their success, and also how they had managed to bypass the Devil's Snare trap she had set herself. The following year, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley drove a bewitched car into the school's Whomping Willow. As the herbology teacher, Professor Sprout was in charge of doctoring the damaged tree by wrapping bandages around the broken branches. On the first day of term, Gilderoy Lockhart, the new defence against the dark arts teacher, gave her useless pointers and made out that he was a better herbologist than she was, which greatly angered her. That day, she taught her 2nd years how to repot a new growth of mandrake. This lesson, and the mandrakes in general, would later prove to be very useful, as Sprout would use them to create a restorative draft for those who had been petrified by the basilisk. The next school year was relatively uneventful at Hogwarts from Pomona's point of view. On October 16th, the Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs had herbology class together, and Sprout taught them how to harvest puffapod beans. During the same year, Sirius Black, a dangerous mass murderer, escaped from Azkaban and tried to get into Hogwarts. It is unknown for sure if she learned that Sirius Black was innocent at the time. It can be assumed that she did not, as she was not a member of the Order of the Phoenix and the information was being kept secret. At the start of term feast of the 1994-95 school year, Professor Sprout sat next to Aurora Sinistra, the professor of astronomy, and was seen talking to her. On the first lesson of the school year, Sprout taught her fourth year students how to squeeze pus from bebotubers. By the end of the lesson, each student had collected several points, which Sprout gave to Poppy Pomfrey, the school matron, since it could be used to remedy acne. At some point early on in the school year, Professor Sprout told Bartimus Crouch Jr., impersonating the Defence Against the Dark Arts teacher Alistair Moody, how good Neville Longbottom was at herbology. Moody, or Crouch Jr., then lent Neville some books on plants and fungi called Magical Water Plants of the Mediterranean and another called Magical Water Plants of the Highland Lochs. That same school year, the Triwizard Tournament was held at Hogwarts, and one of the Triwizard champions was 6th year Hufflepuff Cedric Diggory, whom Sprout knew very well. Cedric was not the only Hogwarts champion, however, as Harry Potter had mysteriously been entered into the tournament. As such, Professor Sprout seemed to act somewhat distant towards Harry. At the end of the year, Cedric Diggory was killed during the third task of the Triwizard Tournament on Lord Voldemort's orders. Harry Potter, at the risk of his own life, brought Cedric's body back to the school grounds. Sprout spoke with Amos Diggory and his wife, since she knew their son best as head of his house. She attended the memorial feast in Cedric's honour, and believed Harry and Dumbledore's claims that Lord Voldemort had indeed returned. The following school year, Dolores Umbridge was made Professor of Defence Against the Dark Arts by the Ministry of Magic in accordance to the Educational Decree No. 22. Umbridge was despised by the majority of the staff, including Sprout. The Gryffindor OWL level class was lectured by Professor Sprout on the importance of the examinations during their first herbology class. Sprout also had the students make a practical exercise which involved using dragon dung fertilizer. She also set them a long essay for the following lesson. Sometime throughout the year, Sprout held career consultations with her Hufflepuff 5th years. As well as her consultations, she also held mock OWLs in the herbology greenhouses for those wanting to revise for the exams. After Harry Potter took part in an interview for the Quibbler about the events that occurred at Little Hangleton Graveyard the previous June, he was put in detention by Professor Umbridge. The rest of the teaching staff, however, found the interview an act of bravery on Harry's behalf and, being forbidden of discussing it per the Educational Decree No. 26, found other ways to express their feelings. Pomona in particular awarded Harry a large amount of house points for simply passing her a watering can. Sprout's capability of teaching was also examined by Umbridge as part of her duties as High Inquisitor. She managed to show Professor Umbridge her ability and skill at teaching herbology and avoided being sacked herself. She was later relieved to see Umbridge removed from the school and warmly welcomed Professor Dumbledore back as headmaster. While giving out the student timetables on September 2nd, Professor McGonagall remarked that Sprout was going to be delighted to see Neville Longbottom back with yet another outstanding OWL in herbology that school year. To start off the year, she taught her 6th years about various extremely dangerous plants and permitted them to actually swear loudly if the venomous tentacular bit them from behind. Not long after, Sprout had her 6th year class harvesting Snargle Luff Pods. She sheeted Harry, Ron and Hermione for being slow, as they were still strapping on the protective gear and talking, while Neville had already harvested his first pod. The trio's first pod bounced free while they were trying to open it, and rebounded off the glass roof of the greenhouse, knocking Professor Sprout's battered hat off her head. In late April of that school year, Sprout helped the new potions master, Horace Slughorn, in picking some potion herbs. She left towards her greenhouse after she had collected enough for Slughorn's 3rd year class, with some to spare also. Slughorn also proceeded to steal some venomous tentacular leaves while Sprout was not around. At the end of the school year, the Battle of the Astronomy Tower took place, with the Death Eaters invading Hogwarts and fighting against the students, teachers, Aurors and the Order of the Phoenix. Professor Sprout participated, as did Minerva McGonagall and Phileas Flitwick. After Professor Dumbledore's death, Sprout met with fellow staff members Minerva McGonagall, Phileas Flitwick, Horace Slughorn and Rubeus Hagrid to discuss the future of Hogwarts. She was a staunch advocate of keeping the school open, stating that Dumbledore would have wanted it so. She also supported the suggestion that Dumbledore should be laid to rest at Hogwarts, though no other headmaster has ever received such a burial there before. Sprout attended Dumbledore's funeral and led the Hufflepuffs down to the grounds where the ceremony was being held, looking cleaner than she had ever been before, without a single patch on her usually battered hat. On August 1st, 1997, the Ministry of Magic was taken over by Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters. By the next school year, Severus Snape was made headmaster of Hogwarts, while his fellow Death Eaters, Electo and Amicus Carroll, became the Muggle Studies and Defence Against the Dark Arts teachers, respectively. Despite the school now in the grasp of Lord Voldemort, or perhaps because of it, Professor Sprout returned to the castle to teach and protect the students. Aware that Lord Voldemort would soon attack the castle after Harry Potter's re-emergence, Sprout and the other professors set to defend the school and the students. She retreated to the greenhouses, collecting various dangerous plants and, with the help of a dozen of her students, namely Neville Longbottom, lobbed mandrakes and everything else over the battlements and onto the Death Eaters. She took a troop of aged students up to the astronomy tower, where they could easily work spells and drop plants, such as venomous tentaculus and snargluffs. During the hour-long break in the Battle of Hogwarts, Sprout helped treating wounded fighters in the Great Hall. She also witnessed the duel between Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort, during which Voldemort's spell rebounded on him, and Harry emerging the victor. After the duel, Sprout, Flitwick and McGonagall all reached to hug Harry at the same time, while everyone else joined in. A celebration feast was held, but no one sat in their proper house tables. Teachers, parents and students were all jumbled up and chatting among themselves. Sprout sat by Phileas Flitwick and Horace Slughorn, chatting and drinking a cup of tea. Sprout presumably remained teaching at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry as Herbology Professor for a couple of years after. By 2014, however, Neville Longbottom taught Herbology either alongside her or as a replacement for her. And that is all for today's video, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Guys, I'm doing another wand giveaway when I reach 5,000 Instagram followers, so if you haven't followed me already, make sure you do to be able to participate in the wand giveaway. I also have a second channel for those Harry Potter fans who are also Game of Thrones fans. It's called Game of Thrones Lore and it's on the right hand side of the screen. Check it out. Guys, thanks very much again for watching. I hope you have a great day and I'll see you at the next video.